So hi, I'm Corinne Stanforth, and today I'm here with Melinda Grisco for the UACC Story Gathering Project. Melinda, can you please tell everyone your name again and then what neighborhood you live in now?
My name is Melinda Grisco, and right now I live in Madisonville.
Madisonville, okay. And then where were you born slash where did you grow up?
In Madisonville.
Oh, okay, you've been there. So what was it like growing up there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can tell you when I was little, I didn't realize that there was a divide or a separation. And I didn't realize that we were classified as poor white people. The railroad tracks was actually a dividing line and it wasn't invisible. All the people of African descent lived on one side of the tracks, and all the white people lived on the other side. Well, this was in the 60s.
Okay. So then as a little girl growing up, what kind of ways did you notice that, or when did you start to notice that more?
I noticed when Martin Luther King Jr. got shot, there was martial law, and there were soldiers on the street with rifles, and we couldn't go out after dark. And then all the stores in downtown Madisonville started closing until there was only like 3 or 4 left, and a lot of the people moved. It was called white flight.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of siblings did you have? Or were you close with them? Did you have any growing up?
We have 4, all older. My first sister was born in West Virginia. My second sister was almost born in West Virginia, and that's where my father's from. And after the Second World War, when he got married and they went back to West Virginia, it wasn't like it was before he left. Coal was still king, but people were, if they didn't work in the coal mine, they weren't making it. It was after the Depression and after the war, but it was kind of a bad time in a bad area. He lived in Mingo County.
Oh, I'm actually part of I play in an Appalachian band and we sing a song called Mingo Junction Train. So I've heard of that.
Was that a real
You
train?
so it's actually my mom is she writes songs, and so it's a song that she wrote. I don't know what she got the inspiration from exactly, but I think it was probably inspired by the area.
Okay.
So you mentioned your father, and I know you have a lot of stories to share about him. Can you tell us a little bit more about his life as an Appalachian immigrant?
As an immigrant, to do you want to know like before he came to Cincinnati or when he came to Cincinnati?
Maybe a little bit before what it was like when he was living in West Virginia, and then the story of him making the move to Cincinnati.
Okay, before like when he was little, there's all kinds of stories about um they would run up over the hill and beat the bus to school. The only high school was in the town at Kermit, which was not close to Delbarton at all. Um, he had several different jobs before he went in the Navy. He worked in coal mines, and he was that crazy guy that put the caps in the dynamite before they blasted.
Wow.
And there's a lot of stories about him and his dad down there. And then after the war, when he went back and expected it to be the same, the creek was polluted, the people were poor. My first sister was born there, and my mom looked around and decided she didn't want to raise her family there because no, this is very stereotypical, but she didn't want her daughters growing up being 13 and pregnant with no teeth, which is kind of sad to say, but that's what happened to a lot of people that live there. I asked my father one time why they moved, and he said, "Your mother complained about her sinuses." And it's like, so you moved to Cincinnati to make your sinuses better? We're not buying that one for a minute.
No.
So I think it was my mom's insistence that they get out of there. When he moved to Cincinnati, they owned a straight eight Buick, and he had one child and one on the way. He knew one person, and he fixed shoes. His father fixed shoes. Um, So he had a trade, and he knew one person that he was going to buy some equipment from, and they the there was a shop he could rent, and behind the shop, upstairs from it, there was an apartment. So they got that apartment. It kind of went with the shop. The first night they spent in Cincinnati was actually on St. Patrick's Day. It would have been 72 years ago
Oh, wow.
this year. And they got there, and my mom, my sister that was born in West Virginia was almost 3. My mom was pregnant, and my sister, that was already born, insisted that they bring the cat and the dog. Well, they had to negotiate, and they couldn't bring the dog, but she brought the cat. My mom wrapped it up like a baby and snuck it into the hotel. And they stayed at the Fort Washington Hotel, which now I believe is some fancy condos in downtown Cincinnati. So after they got here, when they lived in that apartment behind the shop, they had to sell the car because they didn't have any money. And my dad had a sidecar and a motorcycle, and he rode all around and collected shoes to be fixed because there wasn't a shoe repair. He rode out to Claremont County. We went kind of far, and my mom said one time she remembers there's the man she loves and her only child, because he had a sidecar on it, riding away, and she's never going to see him again. But everything was okay, and he didn't wreck on it.
Oh, good.
They were so poor. How poor were they? When they lived in the apartment, they didn't have a refrigerator, and he made a wooden box and nailed it outside the window so they would have keep their food cold in the winter. That
Wow.
was it. That was in 1950.
50s. Okay.
Mhm.
Sounds like hardworking. So what did he do after shoe repair? Did he stay with that for a while?
He stayed with that till he retired. And
Wow.
when he retired, well, he had several shops he had downtown. And I asked him if he moved downtown because of the race riots and the martial law. And he said, no, I got 4 kids and a wife to feed. And so he had shops on 6th Street, Court Street, and Main Street.
Wow.
And then my mom got sick and he had to retire and stay home and take care of her. And when he left us, he had 2 homes in the estate worth $500,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the hard work paid off. Plus,
Hard
my
work.
mom was good with money.
Wow, that's a great story.
That's the like ultimate American success.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that's inspiring for other people. What is your favorite story that he shared with you?
there was a
Like,
lot, and
okay.
my favorite one was the one that I tweaked it and made it into a book, which of course I want to plug if I can.
Yes,
Um,
please.
do you want me to tell you the story? The
Yeah,
oh, okay. I'll tell you the
maybe like
original
an
story.
abbreviated version.
I can tell you the original story that he told me, which is way abbreviated from how I put it in the book.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love
Okay, it's
that.
about Horsepen Mountain, which is a real place. Horsepen Mountain has lots of twists and turns and curves. They don't waste money on guardrails in that part of the country. And in one real foggy early spring morning, the the the, the pickup truck was loaded to the gills with strawberry plants that were headed for points north, because down there they could start the plants and then drive them up north and make some money. And that truck didn't make that second turn, and it tumbled over and over and over all the way down to the bottom where the creek was. Well, on the way down, it spilled out all those strawberry plants all over the place. And then when it hit the bottom, it it it, it burst into flames. The driver was thrown from the truck right when it went off the road and killed instantly. So he really didn't suffer. And the truck burned at the bottom, and it was Friday, and the truck company was wondering where the truck was, and nobody started looking for him till Monday. Now this was early spring, like I said, and the plants started coming up, and it was real foggy. And they did send a search team out, but they couldn't see anything all the way down there, and the truck driver didn't have any family, so they just kind of quit looking. Well, now comes our story person, Joanna. She was out for her morning hike. And she went out one morning. The truck was all the way at the bottom. She never saw it. And the driver's body was never found. We don't know. Was it, vultures or coyotes or something? But what she did find was a lot of those strawberry plants. And those strawberry plants were starting to grow. Well, she just kept her mouth shut and didn't say anything. She was up there gathering some fiddleheads, early spring, some ramps, good stuff like that. You need your greens after the winter. And she kept watching strawberry plants and watching strawberry plants. Pretty soon there were strawberries. So she started picking them and eating them and picking them and eating them. And then she made such, she got extra and they made into jam. And then she put a bunch in and made a pie and entered it in the contest at the county fair. And she won, um, and I was do this, and she won second place. And the prize was um, $5 and a chicken. And well, with that $5, she could buy more stuff to make more pies. And pretty soon she was selling the pies and selling the the jam. And then she kept watching strawberries and they kept growing and they grow like this and they send out more roots. And pretty soon that hillside was covered with strawberries. Well, she kept her mouth shut and never told anybody where they were coming from and made sure she was not followed. And pretty soon she had enough to for the first time in years, get herself a new winter coat and a new pair of shoes. And so the story ends that one fiery truck crash for one is a new coat and shoes for another. And that's the short. But he told me that, and um, I changed it around a lot. And he showed me the place where it was, and we didn't dare get out of the car and walk down the hill. Um, but I believed him. I didn't have any reason not to. I just always thought that was a good story.
Yeah, wow. So what did you tweak to turn it into a children's book?
I
How
tweaked
does?
to turn it into a children's book. It's the widow. Now she's a widow and she lives on a flat part of 52. And there's not a lot of flat parts of 52. And her husband was killed in the Naugatuck mine cave in, and everybody down there was having a hard time. And it was the Depression, and she took in washing, and she was down at the creek washing clothes, and a truck drove by and pitched rotten strawberries and rotten strawberry plants into the creek. And she took them and planted them in her garden. And then from
Okay.
there, it kind of goes the same, then they had enough money for ammo in the gun, and then they could, you know, didn't have to pick up the coal in the off the tracks. They could afford to get the good stuff. And I liked your train story because the coal on the tracks that they used to go up there and scavenge was from Mr. Peabody's coal train, which there is a song about that. And then I found out that was real. Mr. Peabody's coal train was real. So it changed, and then it turned into her and all her kids got new coats and shoes, and
Uh-huh. What is
yeah,
the book called?
it's called. Well, I just happen to have a copy right here. It's
Perfect.
called. Can you see this? Is that
Yeah,
well,
it's a
my?
little blurry. I think it might be messing with the background
Um,
because it's
well,
like,
it's called Strawberries of the Road from the Hills of West Virginia. So,
wow.
and then of course I dedicated it to my dad and my sister because they were born there. I'm sorry you can't see it. What if I back it way up? No, it gets worse.
No, yeah.
Oh well.
Well, I'd love to read that sometime. That's cool.
Thank you.
So when did you start taking an interest in the stories of your father, and how did that kind of evolve into you turning it into your book?
Well, I've always been interested in his stories because growing up we always heard them, and
Mhm.
then I figured out later on that depending on the audience, the stories changed. So we just kind of sat there and kept our mouth shut and was like, well, wonder how the story's going to end this time, because they changed. But
Yeah.
as far as the book, when he got older, and I have a lot more of his stories that I actually asked him stories and wrote down, and a lot of his stories from his childhood just kept evolving into when he was in the Navy. And I got a lot of those too, but I wasn't so interested in that. I wanted to know more about when he was little. So I was always, as long as I can remember, interested.
So, and when you were growing up in Cincinnati, did you guys still use words like Appalachian or Appalachian to describe yourselves, or was that
No,
more some? No, you didn't.
I had no idea that we were.
So when did you kind of make that discovery?
I figured it out when I had friends that were in the neighborhood, and their grandparents were from West Virginia and Tennessee. And it's like, oh, well, so are mine. And then it started clicking, like, oh, wow, that's where all our people came from. It took
Gotcha.
a while. But when you're little, you don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody said, hey, you guys are hillbillies or Appalachian or anything. That term was never used.
Wow. Do you have any other stories you would like to share? Anything about your past growing up or your father's?
He would tell me stories about like how much stuff costs when he was little. And I remember he told me about this stuff. It was called keg of bubble. And he said it was this giant piece of bubble gum, and it was shaped like a barrel. And it was called keg of bubble. And I believe he said it was 2 cents.
2 cents.
And we're talking about like a whole pack of bubble gum as far as the content. And stuff like that. When he talked about they would take apart barrels and use the slats for skis and tie them on their feet, because there's just a bunch of hills down there.
Yeah.
And just like grown up, that how rough people were. In his graduating class from high school, there was, I think, like 22 or 23 people, in like 17 or 18 of them were girls, because boys just didn't finish high school,
Mm-hmm.
because coal was king. They worked in the coal mines, and lumber was a big deal. And because lumber was a big deal and his father was a shoemaker and shoe repair person, his family had money, because they didn't have to work in the coal mines, um, because they fixed the lumberjack shoes and the coal miner shoes.
Wow.
So he did that from when he was little. And he was an only child. His mother had Rh negative blood in the 30s, or in the 20s. They had no idea what that was. And so she probably had a lot of miscarriages. And they
Okay.
described her as having bad blood. And like now, if one person has positive and one has negative, you have a kid and they give you a shot and then you can have more kids. Back then it wasn't like that, and he had no idea what was going on. So he was an only child.
Is there one or a few lessons that you think you learned from your father that you kind of live by today?
Yeah, he taught me how to fix shoes.
Oh, we did.
And the main thing is, yeah, because he made me think for myself and stand up for myself and advocate for myself. He would do something like, oh, I think it's over there, instead of just like, oh, here, it's right here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. And, people don't think of men as being, uh, I guess men are tailors, not seamstress, but my mom also showed, but my dad showed me more about sewing and stuff like that. So the technical, the trade thing he taught me, and the don't believe everything you hear and go figure it out for yourself and stand up for yourself. I guess those are really pretty important.
Yeah, definitely that idea of independence starting at a young age. I know my parents say the same.
Where are you from?
I'm in Cincinnati as well. So I've lived there my whole life. Where it's kind of Anderson.
Yeah,
It's a little farther east. It's like it's almost New Richmond, if you know New Richmond area.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we live.
Where are your parents from?
Yeah, so both my parents grew up in Cincinnati, but then my mom's relatives came from Tellico Mountains
Where's
in
that?
Tennessee.
Okay, I
Tennessee.
was gonna say, I was gonna guess, but I didn't wanna.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's our kind of connection with it. And then me and my grandparents and my siblings, I mentioned earlier, play in the band. So we play a lot of music. That's kind of my strongest connection
what do
with
you play?
Appalachian. I play the dulcimer.
Okay,
Yeah. And then my sister, actually, the rest of my siblings play the guitar.
I play the banjo.
Oh, cool. Really?
Well, I practice the banjo, and actually, it's been hard. I lived in Yellow Springs for 8 years. You know where that is?
Yeah.
It's
I actually go to school in Dayton. So I'm close.
oh, you're at Sinclair.
Just University of Dayton.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you know where Yellow Springs is. I lived
Hmm.
there for 8 years, and I found an excellent teacher, like for a couple years, and I've had a hard time finding anybody that would teach the banjo down here. Do you know anybody?
I actually don't think I know anybody local. There's no one that we play with who plays
Okay,
banjo.
because I can always like do stuff online, but
Hmm.
you know when you actually sit in front of somebody, there's a lot of things that you get a better benefit.
Yeah, I think you get a lot more out of being in person too.
Yeah,
I actually learned from my grandma. So she lived like 10 minutes from us. So we would always just go there and she taught me what I know. So
cool.
yeah,
Very nice. So what's the name of your band?
it's actually called Teleco.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
think you did say that already.
I might have. Yeah, I might have. So yeah, it's just my siblings, my mom, and then it was my grandparents. My grandpa passed, so now it's my grandma.
So what kind of venues do you play? Do you do the Appalachian Festival?
Yeah, and then one of the festivals we've done in the past is it's in Carter Caves. It's JP Fraley Mountain Music Festival. It's in Kentucky, Carter County,
No, I
Kentucky.
know where Carter Caves is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've been here
So
a long time. I get out. Yeah, Carter Caves is a real beautiful area.
it is super nice.
They also have a storytelling festival.
Oh really? When is that?
I'm not sure. I know for the last couple of years it's been canceled, like
Yeah.
everything else. Is the Appalachian Festival canceled this year, or do you know yet?
I don't, I actually don't know yet, but that's coming, that's in May, right?
It's Mother's Day weekend.
Mother's Day weekend. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure. I hope they have it because I've been missing that, but
I've told there,
okay.
like doing my storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't because everything went, with the no live people.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I missed that, hopefully, but we'll have to
yeah.
see. Well, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. Is there anything else before we call it quits that you
Do
would
you have any
like to
more
share?
questions? I was just gonna let you lead and just talk a whole bunch and
Um, Not, I think I've hit a lot of them. I guess I know you mentioned some of it, but how often did you guys visit where your father was from in West Virginia?
well, his father still lived there
Oh, okay.
in the house he grew up in when I
Okay.
was
Wow.
little. So we went pretty much. I mean it was like we're gonna go see Grandpa Grisco. And
Hmm.
as opposed to the other grandpa, you use the last name. It's the first names were always grandpa. When you're a kid, you don't know your grandpa's first name. It's
No.
grandpa. And no, we went down there a lot. And I remember the one thing about the house was they had sulfur water. And there was a pump house out back. I mean, they had running water in the house, but they had sulfur water, and the minute you got out of the car, it smelled like rotten eggs. And it doesn't smell good, but I think it's really good for you.
Oh, really?
Because my dad passed when he was 97. He still had all his own teeth, his bones were in good shape, and he still had all his hair.
Wow.
And pretty much of his mind was really also still left. And I think that there's something to that, that if your system is clean and you eat good, I think there's a lot to it. So, no, I went there a lot when I was little. Um, but it was just like, you're going to grandpa's house.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, oh, the one with the stinky water? Yeah.
That's how you remembered it. You're like,
That was a big factor.
yeah.
And there was a pump house out back. Well, where's the pump? Well, it was an electric pump. I mean, it wasn't the hand kind of pump. And the whole house stunk, but that's what you did when you went down there and drank it and got used to it.
So when's the last time you guys went there or that you've been there?
Oh, I go down the graveyard. The graveyard is actually you can't drive a car to it. And when my sister passed, since she was born there, she got cremated and asked to be put there. So I go down. Actually, I'm planning a trip in August. I go down maybe once a year, and it is actually on Route 52, and the house is gone now. But you can't drive to it, and there's a closed school, and then we have to park the car and walk about. It's like a quarter of a mile straight up, and there's a lot of graves up there that don't have markers, or some of them just have a rock, and a lot of them have cedar trees. And there's a lot of Hatfields and McCoys and names like that that you would know or have heard of. My dad said his dad knew Devil Anse Hatfield. That was another story, and I don't know if I believe that or not. But at my grandfather's funeral, he had this massive, um, I don't know what it was, really nice, dark, maybe cherry um, casket, coffin, whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the grave's up on the hill. There's no road to it. There's just a path. And it had been raining, and there was these four big, healthy farm boys carrying it, and one of them slipped and they dropped it. And no, did not open, and no, he did not roll out. But it was a struggle to get back up and get him up the hill, and
Wow.
that was certainly a wonderful childhood memory. Now we're going to your grandpa's funeral. Whoops. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was kind of real weird.
I bet. Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad it
so
stayed shut.
we went back a lot. There's no house, but we go back um to clean up the graveyard and pay our respects and talk to
Sure.
them or whatever it is. It's a
Yeah.
little creepy. One time we went up the hill and my dad told me to be careful of the sawbros. Um, and I'm like, what? Watch, mind them sawbros. What are you talking? Because he still said stuff like that all the time. I'm like, what? And he's like, that right there. And he pointed to a plant. I said, you mean the sawbriars? Yeah, sawbros. There was stuff like that. There's a lot of words
Yeah.
that got blended in.
Well, wow. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. It was great to hear your story and your father's.